twisting through 7 suns of gold, and the gypsy was insisting that its story must be told.
Hey there, welcome back to the Soberful podcast. It's Veronica, and I'm going to talk to you today about the process of getting sober, because getting sober is not an event, it's a process. And I'm going to talk you through all of those stages. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and then you won't miss any of the episodes. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, just make sure you follow us and then you don't miss any of our episodes. We have some really great ones coming up. Okay, so there's several things I'm going to cover in this episode. I'm going to cover the process of stopping drinking. I'm going to talk about what to expect, what happens, how you're going to feel, and how all of those different processes come together. Now, you've heard me say this many times before. Early sobriety is not how it is long term. And it's vital that you know that, because I have seen countless people stop drinking and 30 days in, 50 days in, they feel better because they're not hungover and they've got more energy and they're sleeping a bit better maybe. But they do feel quite flat and a bit lost because they haven't rediscovered themselves as a sober person. And they start saying to themselves, is this it? Like, is this it? Like, is this how it's going to be? Because honestly, I mean, I'm glad I'm not hungover. I'm glad I'm not making an ass of myself. But this kind of flat, grey nothingness, which is a common feeling in very early sobriety, they're saying to themselves, like, if this is how it's going to be, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, this isn't great. And I want you guys to know, this is so important. It's not how it is long term. That feeling and experience will pass. And the reason for that is because of dopamine and how dopamine has been messed around with in your brain. And it's really helpful to understand a little bit of the science behind that. I am not a science person, so I'm just going to do my best to explain this very, very simply. But alcohol interferes catastrophically with our brain and body's functioning, even small amounts of alcohol. When you're taking alcohol in, it is so catastrophic for your internal organs that your body wants to get rid of it as quickly as possible. So your body kind of steps up and goes into like a hyperdrive of, we need to get this stuff out as quickly as possible. So that's why you pee a lot and you can sweat it out and you can smell it. Your body is just trying to get rid of it. Now, what's happening in the brain is we are interfering with how the brain functions in creating the chemicals that we need to feel okay. One of them is dopamine, which is the reward chemical. When we've been using alcohol for a while, not only have we interfered with how our brain creates dopamine, we have also, our brain has shut down some of the receptor sites that dopamine normally goes into. So there's less kind of buckets, if you like, for dopamine to go into to get that feeling of feeling good. Which is why it is almost inevitable in very early sobriety, and I'm talking 3 months, 6 months, that you are going to have days where you feel very flat and boring and grey. And the reason for that is chemical, because of what's going on in your brain. It's not because that's how sobriety is. So I really want you to know that. If you give your brain a chance to heal, for those receptor sites to open up and dopamine and all the other feel-good chemicals to function the way that they were meant to function, that flat grey feeling will eventually go. Now, how long it takes, I've read some research that says 90 days and others that say it can take 14 months. There's so many variables: your age, how much you drank, your gender, how long you drank for, etc., etc. Know that every day is going to keep getting better. Every day, just being at the end of 30 days, you should start to feel kind of more energy, sleeping better, just not being hungover is a wonderful, wonderful experience. So things are going to keep getting better, but when you're in it, it's very hard to see it. And this happens. I just recently had a bunch of clients, actually, I think it was back in April, kind of turn a year, get a year of sobriety. And that was amazing. And they all said the same thing, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how far I've come. I cannot believe how much I've changed, how good this is, that kind of stuff. And I want to tell you, every single one of them at some point in that early sobriety period had a kind of, is this it? Like this flat, like every single one of them had that experience and that feeling. When we're in it, we can't see the change. We just can't see it when we're in it. When it's only in hindsight that we can look back. And that's why kind of markers of sobriety time, like 6 months, a year, 18 months, it's really helpful to look back and see what has changed and how far you've come. So the first thing you need to know about the process of getting sober is you need to give it some considerable time. And I'm going to say a year at least for your brain to really, really recover from the catastrophe that is ethanol in your body. So give your organs, give it all time to recover. I promise that life will begin to be in technicolor again, right? That there's nothing, one of the things I used to really enjoy about watching people in early sobriety is the first time that they really laugh, that they really, really belly laugh, right? That just like helpless, like you're crying with laughter. And that's setting off a bunch of chemical reactions in your brain, by the way. Like that chemically, your brain's going, oh, this feels really, really good. Without fail, when I see people in early sobriety just have that, like when they're just laughing, they all say that was different. Laughing in sobriety is different. It's deeper. It has more. It's deeper, right? I mean, we've all laughed and been hysterical and silly drunk, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to do that when you're inebriated. But doing it sober, it's like it's the difference. But for me, it's like having, like freshly squeezed organic orange juice, or like an orange drink out of a can, right? That's the difference. Like the freshly squeezed organic orange juice is just, so good, right? And you'll get the orange taste from the one in the can or the bottle or whatever, but they're different. So there's a lot of discovery in the process of getting sober. There's a lot of new experiences to discover. And if you're on this journey, you need to make this commitment to yourself that you are going to put healing and health at the forefront and give your brain that opportunity to get back to doing what it can do. Now, of course, it's a very, very small amount of people who do have some kind of chemical imbalance in their brain, and medication is appropriate for them. And that's something you would need to speak to your doctor about. But I've done this for over 20 years, and the majority of people, with a little bit of time, everything goes back to normal. Now, there is things you can do, and one of the number one things you can do is exercise. Exercise is, we know it's good for us, right? But it's actually really, really good for healing our brain. I talk about this in my book, actually, Soberful, when I talk about movement. I researched a book called The Joy of Movement by Kelly McGonigal, and lots of really interesting information in there. And she talks about how addiction affects the brain and how healing exercise can be for the brain and help with those receptor sites and all of that kind of stuff. So the number one thing you should be doing is exercising every morning. Go for a walk, do something. That you are actively healing yourself when you do that. So there's a lot of kind of bodily functions that are going to take a while to reset and go back to homeostasis. Our gut bacteria, again, ethanol has been going through our internal organs. Ethanol was what we were putting on our hands during COVID to kill it. So our gut has been messed around with. That takes a little bit of time to heal. Please don't go on some crazy elimination diet in the first 6 months. I really think that's setting people up to fail. I've seen people like, I'm quitting alcohol and I'm doing Whole30 as well. Or there's so much deprivation. You do not want to start eating in a way that you feel deprived, because you are probably going to feel deprived because you're not drinking. That will go, but that's certainly there at the beginning. Don't add more deprivation onto that, right? Just try and eat, just a bit of real food, you know, make sure you're eating some fruit and vegetables, that kind of stuff, drinking lots of water. Don't go crazy with it, but all of that is going to help your you know, energy and gut and all of that kind of stuff. And then there's hormones, there's energy levels. Sleep is a big one, and we've talked about sleep a lot, and I've done an episode on sleep. Different things for different people. Some people are fine within a few weeks. Some people are just really tired and sleeping a lot. And I'd say more commonly is the finding it hard to get to sleep and having broken sleep. And I speak as someone who's experienced insomnia quite badly in my 20s and 30s. So I do speak from experience. The sleep will get better, but it might take a bit of time. This is where the pillar of balance comes in, the 5 pillars of sobriety, balancing our needs according to our circumstances. If you are having some nights where you don't have a great night's sleep, then you need to, the next day, balance what you do according to your circumstances. So that means, you know, maybe there's just some things that won't get done today. Maybe there's some obligations that you can cancel. Maybe the kids have pizza tonight for dinner. You know, we need to respond to what our circumstances are. And exhaustion, not getting enough sleep, is a circumstance that we need to balance and respond to. I have found that there's lots of things you can do. You know, I've made suggestions before: taking magnesium at night, definitely not having a phone in your room, watch your caffeine intake, you know, white noise, there's all of that kind of stuff. What I find worked for me, 2 things. If I wake up and I can't get back to sleep, so I read my Kindle. Reading really helps to shut my that part of your brain that's kind of thinking about all the things you have to do and get done. And I can more often than not go back to sleep. I use my Kindle because the light doesn't bother me or my husband. I don't look at my phone because that blue light will activate parts of your brain that will keep you awake. The other thing that I do is I also just accept it. I don't anymore do the, oh my God, I've got 3 hours and then I've got 3 hours and I have to get back to sleep because I've got to get up and I've got to get all these things done. Oh my God. That does not work. Doesn't work. I just accept it. I just accept this is just how it is for today. I balance my day according to those circumstances to the best of my ability. And I go to bed as early as possible the following night. Accepting that just this is how it is, I found to be the best way to navigate that. Okay, so I want to talk about the several things I want to cover here. There is never a good time to stop drinking. It's like getting pregnant. There's never a good time. There's always going to be things going on. I hear this a lot from people. Like I have this big wedding and I'm going to stop after that. I have this big trip, or, you know, after Christmas, like there's always going to be that stuff going on. You're never going to have a clear run of even several weeks, let alone several months of just no external events or pressure to drink. The only time that ever happened was during COVID. That's never going to happen again, hopefully. But you understand what I'm saying, right? There's going to be events, barbecues, parties, weddings, things, vacations, right? The best time to stop drinking is right now. That is the best time. In fact, what's interesting is there is some research that shows if you can get sober in a community environment, your chances of staying sober long term are actually much higher. Now, if you go to like a 30-day rehab, and some people have to do that, that's appropriate. Most people are going to stay sober in a 30-day rehab, right? Because you just can't get it, right? You're not locked away, but you can get it. You're an adult, you could leave, but it's hard, right? It would be hard to go and get alcohol. In your daily life, it's just there, right? And if you can learn how to navigate and be sober while living your life, your chances of staying sober long term are going to be much higher. Now, I'm not going to go too much into it in this episode because we've covered this before, but there's lots of ways you can navigate life as a newly sober person and stay sober. You know, events, all of that kind of stuff. But I want to say you are lying to yourself and you're just kidding yourself if you're like, after this event, after this thing, that's when I'll do it. Because I'm going to bet you've probably said that like 1,000 times, right? I mean, you probably started saying that years ago, and here we are. It's now, right? When's it going to be? When are you going to take this seriously? So there's never a right time. The best time to get sober is right now. It's today. Right now, this is the best time to get sober. And then just to reassure you, You can absolutely live sober in a wet world. It does fade into the background. It doesn't really exist for you. You just live your life. Chip and I, all the people I know who are long-term sober, we just live our life. And I've been sober in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and my 50s. I've done everything sober, everything. I was just in England. This band, you probably heard them, Oasis, they're going to do a tour next year. I remember seeing Oasis at the V Festival, big music festival in England. Saw them back in, maybe it was 2006, 2005, can't remember, roughly about that time. I used to go to the V Festival every year with my mates. Big festival, lots of bands, saw amazing performers there, did all of that sober. I love live music. So many gigs I've been to, sober. Vacations, all of that, barbecues. You can do whatever you want when you are sober. You can go anywhere. You are not going to miss out on anything, and everything is better. It just takes a little time. That's not going to be the reality in the first few months. That's the thing. When I say early sobriety is not how it is long term, there may be some things that it's wise for you to opt out of because they are so alcohol fueled. There'll be so much temptation, so many triggers that your chance of getting through that, if you are still early days and feeling a bit vulnerable, is going to be a bit more challenging. And it might be better just to opt out of that. But down the road again, no, don't. I did this. I remember I was a few months sober. It was a Saturday night. I was 27 years old and I was cleaning my toilet. It was 10 p.m. and I was thinking, everybody is out having an amazing Saturday night and I'm cleaning my bathroom. Is this how it's going to be? Because this sucks. No, it's not. You don't have to avoid and stay home and not go to the party. You can do all of those things. It's just in the early days, those first few months, and I'm not sticking, it's different for everybody. I'm not saying it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever. In those first few months, it is wise to just think ahead and perhaps avoid situations that are really, alcohol soaked. Down the road, can you do whatever you want? Yeah, you can. I used to go night clubbing. I don't anymore. I haven't been in a nightclub for a very long time. But I did in my 20s. I went clubbing. I did all of that kind of stuff. So all this stuff is happening. So lots is happening. Lots and lots of all these things are happening at the same time. Doing all the first sober, all of that kind of stuff. You are also going to be going through the stages of grief. And this is the emotional process that is happening, the stages of grief. The final stage is acceptance. And you can only stay sober a long time when you have deeply accepted within yourself that you cannot drink. I have accepted that I just cannot drink alcohol. But we have to go through all of these other stages before we can't just skip to acceptance. And you may recognize some of them. And again, we've talked about this previously on the podcast. Denial, just the phase of I'm not that bad. I can't be that bad. I'm not that bad. Not that bad as that person. So I must be fine. That's denial, right? Then anger. The stages of grief, they can move around. Like you may not necessarily go into anger. You could go into bargaining. Anger it feels very much like I'm the only one and it's not fair. Like everyone else is fine. Look at them. They're all fine at the party, at the thing. They're all fine. They're having a great time. They're fine. And I'm the one who can't drink and it's not fair. And that's how anger feels. It feels it's not fair. Here's the thing, guys. I want to tell you, if you drink problematically, at least 50% of the people around you are also questioning their relationship with alcohol. I did that a lot. I used to think everybody else was fine. Everyone around me was like, they don't have any problems. They can manage their drinking. Their lives are great. It's only me. I'm the loser. I'm the problem. And guys, that's not true. It's just not true. Everybody has stuff. Everyone. Every single person has their struggles. It may not be alcohol. It may be something else. But I want to tell you, guarantee you are not the only person questioning their relationship with alcohol around you. It's just you're at a different stage to them. So you might go through the anger stage. It's not fair, all that kind of stuff. Bargaining. Bargaining is usually where the moderation tries to show up. Like if I can only figure out the formula, Like there's got to be a formula that means I can drink and it will be okay. Like, what is that formula? If I can just figure out, like, for me, like, I remember one of the things I did was, like, I couldn't have a job that started in the morning because I always felt like crap in the morning. So it had to start at like 2 PM because then I could drink after work and then not have to get up early and blah, blah, blah. You know, they're just how we're, but when we are trying to moderate our drinking, or we're thinking about how we could moderate, or this time we can, this time, like, it's been 6 weeks. I could, you know, I could have like 2 or 3 a week. That would be fine. That's the bargaining. How, and I'm going to say you've probably done that for a while, probably several years. We just have to get honest with ourselves and just have a real look at the reality of our drinking. One of the things I do when clients work with me, I get them to go through a worksheet called the True Cost of Drinking. And it's basically a cost benefit analysis of their alcohol use and the consequences of their alcohol use. And it's really helpful to see it all in paper, the absolute cost of our drinking, how much it costs us, because then we can't, like, the bargaining is harder then. This is when I say putting weight on the sober end. Like, we just want to keep putting weight on the sober end and really looking at the cost of drinking and seeing that it's been like that for years. It's really helpful to do that because you look at that and then you're like, oh, the fun that I thought I was having, like, really not worth it. Not getting a good return on my investment. Like, all the times I drank, the cost to my health, like, it's that's the question. Are you getting a good return on your investment? And that will help with the bargaining. You're going to go through sadness. You're going to feel sad. And this is not to be underestimated. There's many parts to this. You are reinventing yourself. That's quite a wonderful thing, by the way, reinventing yourself. We all have in our heads this sort of idea of what we are as a drinker, right? You know, most of my clients are middle-aged women. And I just think, if you look at the TV, every show which has a middle-aged woman in it, you know, she's a top lawyer or a fierce detective or a stressed mom, right? They all have beautiful white kitchens and these really gorgeous glasses of wine, right? And in our heads, that's what we look like. That's what we think we are, but that's not the reality. In my head, I thought I was Sarah Jessica Parker in Sex and the City, right? Sophisticatedly drinking cocktails. The other, because this was the 90s, the other thing that when I was a poor student in North London, I used to go with my best friend and we'd go to the bars in North London and drink, like on a Tuesday, as you do, Bollinger champagne on a student budget. Bollinger was really expensive because we got that from Absolutely Fabulous. Like bottle of Bolly, and we thought we were hilarious. In fact, I remember a little side story. When I was living in Mile End in London with my fiance at the time, we got a kitten and I called it Bollinger. So in my head, I was sort of this hilarious North London girl drinking champagne. Again, the reality was far, far, far from the image in my head. So there is going to be some sadness as reality really kind of kicks in and we let go of this image that we have. And we're letting go of the romanticism of alcohol. I have a lot of clients a lot of Americans, for instance, who are doing a trip of a lifetime to Europe. And they're like, how can I go to France and not drink? How can I go to Italy and not drink? How can I go to Germany and not have beer? Right? Well, you can actually. It's really easy and much better. But we have these romantic notions that if we do this thing and add alcohol to the event, to the trip, to whatever it is, the event will just be just that much better because alcohol has been added to it. How many times was that true in the past, right? This is a form of self-delusion. Nobody shows up in front of me by accident. You wouldn't be watching this, listening to this, if alcohol wasn't a problem, right? So there's a sadness in there's just that grief of, like, I'm not going to go to Italy and drink wine. I'm not going to go to Napa. I'm just not going to do those things. And there is a sadness. Let yourself be sad. Let yourself be sad and mourn and grieve, because that is just a perception. It's just, I've been all over Europe. I've been to Italy, been to France, been to Spain, all over. And oh God, the food, amazing. Never missed the alcohol. It was absolutely fine. The food was wonderful. The experience was wonderful. You can do all of those things. So know that you are going to go through some sadness as you let go of all of those beliefs. And then what happens is, and this is, you've heard me talk about this, sobriety is just a shift in perception. We just shift our perception of everything, because sobriety is actually expansive. It's not about loss or lack or a smaller life or missing out, because none of that sounds attractive. It is actually, your life will open up. Experiences will open up. Because here's the truth, right? When we romanticize events and drinking at certain events, a lot of us have set up events like trips or a party or whatever it is, and we're telling ourselves it's about going to Italy and the culture, it's about going to France, or it's about going, here to Napa with my girlfriends and bonding with my girlfriends. No, the primary purpose was you could drink to excess. The event was second. We dress up a lot of our events and tell us it's about the event, but it's not really about the event. It's about the drinking. It's about the drinking at the event. I remember I had a client who, she was a few months sober, and every year would go to this music festival and with her friends, and it was a big thing, and they loved it and they loved the bands, and she was really like yearning to like, can I just have that weekend and drink that weekend? And I got her to talk me through it, like what happens. Well, they spend all this money, they sleep in a tent, it's really hot, they get really messed up on alcohol and other stuff. She loses her friends generally. She's sort of wandering around having random conversations with strangers, often misses the bands because she's passed out or at the back or trying to find a toilet, or and then she's really hungover and they don't get any sleep. Like, I'm like, it sounds hideous. Stay home and listen to the radio. At least you can sleep in your own bed. And what she saw was, it was never about the experience and the band and her friends. It was an excuse to drink as much as she wanted around the clock. And we've done that with a lot of events. So after we go through that process, then we can get to acceptance. And I want to kind of leave you with this, because this is the bit that we have to come to. This is what we have to accept to stay sober long term. We have to accept deep within ourselves, 100%, absolutely, that we can't drink alcohol ever. That you may be able to, but I know I can't. I have proven that to myself, and I have accepted 100% that is never going to change. And I want to tell you, one of the things, because I've been sober for 24 years, is I have seen that. I have seen people who have had long-term sobriety decades, for whatever reason, go back to alcohol, and they don't pick up where they left off. They pick up as if they'd kept going. And that's because of aging. And I've seen people die, and it get very bad very, very quickly. So don't think if you've been sober decades that it will be different. It won't. My brain chemistry has changed. It's different around alcohol. And I have also accepted, it's not just that, I've accepted that it doesn't bring anything to my life, that alcohol lies, that there was no return on my investment, that the fun, excitement, belonging, connection, relaxing, rewarding myself that I thought alcohol brought was all a lie. It was empty. It never fulfilled its promises. So I think it's like, start there, like accepting that, like, alcohol has lied to us. It hasn't returned, met its promises. It hasn't brought the fun, excitement, the belonging. Well, it just hasn't. And that sobriety could, and it will, if you keep going. So this is why early sobriety is not how it is long term, right? This is an experience. All these things that once you get to acceptance, you pretty much live there. Like, and that's, alcohol just ceases to be, it's just a thing. It's out there. It's not, I never envy, I never yearn, because sobriety has delivered on its promises. And I want you guys to give yourself some time for sobriety to deliver on its promises. So once you've been through this unique period of early sobriety, it's not to be repeated. Then you kind of do the next phase. And I think maybe I'll do an episode on that, which is kind of post the first year and what to expect. Because I think post the first year is when you start doing a lot more deeper emotional work will start coming up. And I'll do an episode on that. But hopefully this has helped you if you are in the process of getting sober. There is a lot going on. And this is why we need community. You need community. You need people who've gone through the same thing, who can tell you it's going to get better. And you need, to work with someone like me or, a coach or a mentor, somebody who can help you navigate this very, very unique process of early sobriety. Please make sure you're subscribing and hitting the follow button. Please give us a rating on any of the podcast apps. That really helps. And let me know what you think of this episode and if you have any questions. And we'll be back next week. Take care. Bye-bye.